Hello and welcome to the ZigAnalysis of this, the Tata Punch EV, what Tata Motors is calling its first pure EV.
Yeah, it's first born electric.
Yeah, that might lead to a little bit of confusion because pure EV is a term we would use for battery electric vehicles in general. But the reason behind that is that this might just look like yet another Tata product that's basically been a petrol or diesel powered car that's been given an electric powertrain with a little bit of a refresh. But the changes over here are a lot more significant than that. And the sum total of the difference it makes is kind of difficult to explain. It gets very technical, but the idea behind it was to make sure that with this Gen 2 platform, to ensure that the experience that you'd get with a Tata Punch petrol and a Tata Punch EV in terms of the pros, the experience in terms of space, practicality per se, is not affected, and any difference you experience is generally going to be a net positive.
Right.
There is a lot of new tech. The architecture at its core is brand new. There's a lot of new features on board as well, but let's start with the basics.
Okay, basics, like most other Tata products, you get to pick between two battery packs.
Yeah.
On the Tiago and the Nexon, they're called MR and LR, mid-range and long range. On the Punch EV, it's just standard and long range. So the standard gets a 25 kilowatt hour battery
That's
pack.
right.
The long range gets a 35 kilowatt hour battery pack. Obviously, with the larger battery pack, you also get an uprated motor. And this is my favorite bit. The uprated motor is good for 120 horsepower, 190 Nm, making it the most powerful Punch there is. And look at it, it's a chintu little thing.
That does a sub 10 seconds 0 to 100 claimed.
And like you said, to get this kind of performance, you'd probably have to go a couple of segments above. But we'll discuss performance in detail in a bit. But it is Tata. That means there will be personas.
Several.
Surprisingly not. Because I was expecting at least 9 million variants of the Punch.
To be conservative.
I'm very happy to report that there are just 3 personas. There's the smart, there's the adventure, and there's the empowered. What you see here is the empowered. Now, obviously, because it's Tata, they want to confuse you. So there's a smart plus, there's an empowered plus, there is a sunroof option on the adventure, empowered and empowered plus. So there are a lot of variants. And it is designed to confuse you probably so that you say, screw it, I'm just going to buy the top spec there is. But this is the top spec. This is the top shelf empowered plus, and I really want to see a dark edition of this. And I really hope that happens in the future. But right now, the pricing sits between 11 to 15.5 lakh rupees.
Correct.
Which is slap bang in the middle of the Tiago EV, which is in the 8.7 to 12 range, and the Nexon EV at the top end, which starts where this ends, which starts at 15 lakhs and goes all the way up to 20 lakhs. So in terms of product positioning, it is the Tiago mixed with the Nexon that fits right in the center.
Yep. So let's get into the changes now that we've had a fair amount of context setting that's come into play here. The first and probably the most apparent place where you're going to see any changes will primarily be the exterior, because yes, you do have the new family look with the Tata Punch EV that we've seen with the Nexon, the Nexon EV, the Tata Harrier, the Tata Safari. You're going to see it across the range. Even the Sierra and Curve concepts had this exact same look. And apart from having this connected look up front, you'll find that these are the DRLs on either side. This is technically the pilot light. You have LED headlights right here along with LED fog lights. And coolly enough, you also have sequential turn indicators right here. I love doing this with the car next to me. It just gives me so much more flexibility to do it.
It also has goodbye and welcome animation. And I think it's the most affordable car to have this feature. Right? And overall, from the front, yes, there is a lot of mini Nexon going on. And another detail that I want to draw your attention to is this little section here. That is the charging flap. It's not electric. You have a release switch on the inside. It'll move on to the side. What's even more interesting is that logo there. I mean, yes, it is the general Tata T logo, but it's now two-dimensional. It's now black and white, more in tune with the modern minimal theme that everyone's kind of going for. That is the logo that you will see going forward on a lot of Tata cars, and it has been debuted with the Punch EV. From the side and the rear,
not much. So that is the basic point here, that if you look at this car up front, the front 3/4, that is the profile where it's going to be a completely brand new model. But once you come to the side profile, yes, there is a difference. You do have 16-inch alloy wheels. The wheel design itself is similar to what we've seen with the Nexon, where it's aero style. The rear end is absolutely untouched. And now you might ask why that is. And there is no great strategic reason behind it. It is simply a function of cost optimization, because the rear end design to go with those brand new panels, the design for the tail lights and all, it takes a lot of work. And especially with this particular budget segment that they were playing in, they were trying to avoid that at this stage. Where we might see that coming into play is when the regular Punch petrol itself starts to see some kind of a deep facelift coming into play somewhere later in its life.
See, what I like about the Punch is that it's very unabashedly SUV in the way it's designed, right? The rump is very small. The hood is nice, chunky, tall. It's got overall very tall proportions. And another trait that you associate with SUVs is ground clearance, and you'd expect with a large battery pack, the ground clearance to have gone down. And this is where the Gen 2 architecture technically comes into play, where they've been very clever in the way they manage the positioning and the placement of the battery pack. Ground clearance on the Punch EV is still 190 millimeters. That means you will have the confidence to go slightly off-road, should you need to do that. On the whole, the Punch EV looks like it's got enough to differentiate from the petrol Punch. For now. There are very interesting colors. There's this, what's it called? It's called
Empowered Oxide, is it?
Yeah, Empowered Oxide. They've got a beautiful seaweed green in the Adventure. That looks great. And obviously the Smart gets a nice whitish grey shade as well. Overall, really, let's call it electric package. I really want to use that adjective for some reason.
Clichés work.
But more than the exterior, it is the interior that is really, let's say, selling the Punch to me.
Definitely. So let's start with the more fundamental aspects of it. Like, first of all, the boot space itself, not altered. You have the exact same amount of boot space that you're going to get in the Tata Punch petrol, which means that yes, it does have a high loading lip, but the boot itself is perfectly capable of fitting in 3 suitcases. 3 trolley bags, not suitcases.
So we managed 3 cabin-sized trolleys and a duffel bag. I've got enough reason to believe it will be able to fit in 4 cabin trolley bags, which should be enough for a weekend's luggage.
Yeah, and along with that, now one question might come at that: is there a spare tire, a space saver even? No, there isn't. There is a puncture repair kit that's being offered with it. Now, a lot of people would make that case over here, saying that realistically, for most punctures, you will have somebody to repair it. You don't really resort to using your spare tire as often. Like, I don't think I've used mine in an eternity. That is a discussion I leave up to you. I'm not going to make that judgment call for you. Yes, it would be nice, but is it all that necessary, especially with a car like this? Maybe not. But that's a judgment call that I'll leave up to you guys.
There's another bit of storage that you get, and that's surprisingly under the bonnet. There's a Frunk.
5 kilo load capacity, mainly for the charger. You'll place the charger on board.
Probably, or maybe the puncture repair kit itself. Then that's about it. In terms of the boot space, it's not changed from the petrol version. It's not the best boot there is, but it's enough for a weekend's luggage. The Frunk is to store your charger. And then let's please discuss the interior. Because to me, it's Nexonified now.
It has been heavily.
And it boils down to 3 major design changes, right? First is the steering wheel. That's the exact same that you get in the Nexon, down to the upholstery because it's white and grey. The second bit is the climate control interface. From the Punch petrol, it's been changed from physical keys to this touch-based system. And then there's the floor console that's been redesigned entirely, which enables them to put in the wireless charger, the electric parking brake, so on and so forth. On the whole, the way the interior is laid out, it looks like a much richer car, at least visually. Right? What do you think it's doing in terms of quality and fit and finish?
So quality and fit and finish, honestly, I'm quite happy with, especially with the price point that it's playing at. It's definitely doing a good job over there, and they have brought in variables like the leatherette seat upholstery, the larger seats. So the experience over there does feel better. I'm not going to outright go ahead and say that this is something premium or luxurious. That's not really the expectation at this price point. But yes, it does feel like a great place to be in. And if you're talking about the impact of the electrification into the cabin space itself, yes, the battery pack has eaten into the floorboard just a little bit. It does affect the seating position mildly, but the actual seat's hip point itself, basically the seating position itself, not really much of a change compared to the Tata Punch petrol. And subsequently, even the space and practicality quotient when it comes to family capabilities, there's not that much of a difference compared to a Tata Punch. So it's, yes, it is a manageable family car, but the family in question would ideally need to be small. I wouldn't qualify for that. But if you're primarily looking at, maybe 2 or 3 people driving, being in the car often enough, if you're looking to do a daily commute wherein the passenger seat or the rear seat doesn't come into play all that often, that's a great touch. One thing I'm not a fan of though is that the rear seat belts have not got, they've gone, no other way to put this, they've pulled a Maruti Suzuki here, that the rear seat belts have not got load sensors. So unless you buckle them in, and no one's sitting in the back, if they're unbuckled, you're going to hear the seatbelt alarm going off. completely avoidable, especially and the reason why I'm saying completely avoidable is look how much else they have brought into the package to make this car so incredibly premium, right? First of all, the safety package, 6 airbags are standard, ISOFIX comes as standard, ESP comes as standard. It's coming with a 360-degree camera with a fantastic resolution with a blind view monitor along with it. This is the exact same feature that you're going to get in the 25-28 lakh rupee Tata Safari. That feature is being offered in this car as well. So it's like when you could do all that, was this really the place to, pull back?
Because the rear seatbelt reminder brings me to the rear seat space, right? I want to touch upon it just a little more before we move on to the infotainment. The rear seat space for a 6-footer like me to sit behind my own driving position is just about enough. My knee touches the front seat. They have tried to scoop it out, but in this particular version that has ventilated seats, you kind of feel yourself brushing against the front a little too much. The front seat itself is a lot wider. The cushioning on it is heavy. They've altered the cushioning section on the rear seat as well. So and this is something we found with the Nexon, where in the recent facelift, the overall space kind of felt lower than what it was.
Correct.
And that's the same case here, right? But otherwise, in terms of quality, the leatherette that they've used, they've been kind of cheeky with it also, because it's not entirely leatherette, especially if you look at it in the front. The center section is leatherette where the ventilation happens. The rest of it is kind of rugged feeling fabric. It is still white in this particular model. Will get dirty, be careful. Another very, very small bugbear I want to say is that on the door pad there is no kind of cover for the armrest. So you've got very hard scratchy plastic on one side and a really smooth center armrest. So that feels kind of, before and after for a Gillette razor. But yeah, other than that, especially if you're going to be using the car solo, right? It just lets you enjoy so many features.
Exactly.
The first, of course, is that 10.25-inch touchscreen. We've used it, and I know a lot of people are waiting to know what lags, glitches, bugs we faced. We're very sorry to report we faced none. There's the 10.25-inch digital driver's display. Again, in case you want to know what lags, glitches, bugs we faced, there were none. They just work. They have a very particular theme that is tailored to the persona of this car, and it just works. The touch controls there, you control the 360-degree camera from there, the automatic AC from there. Surprisingly, this doesn't have the express cool feature.
Right.
That is something that I would have liked to have. But other than that, everything else, just simply works. I'm just ratting off the highlights. We've got an electric sunroof. We've got front seat ventilation. We've got wireless charger. We've got a bejeweled drive selector, which is knurled finish for the gear knob with a display in it. And what else? We've got an electric parking brake, a central armrest.
With auto hold.
With auto hold, and not a central armrest, with auto hold. A central armrest. And on the whole, I remember having this discussion with you where we said, hey, this costs as much as a top spec Brezza petrol or a Nexon petrol or a Sonnet petrol. But if you were really after those cars for the features, this thing is not really going to make you feel shortchanged in that regard.
And just to get into a little bit more detail when it comes to the infotainment system, this particular touchscreen does come with wireless support for both Android Auto as well as Apple CarPlay. You also have the acti.ev functionality brought in. That was something we've only seen with the Nexon EV so far, something that we will see only with Tata's electric products most likely, because the target for that is mainly for you to have something to do when your car is being charged. May not be all that possible in DC fast charge spots because the attendants won't let you sit inside the car for safety reasons. But yes, with acti.ev you can play YouTube, you can have Disney Hotstar, Eros now. Netflix isn't there just yet, but those functionalities can be brought in over there with the support of a eSIM.
Update,
so you can use a dongle or use your phone's hotspot to run that stuff. Similarly, with the 10.25-inch digital instrument cluster, you will also see that has the navigation display over there. Again, if you're running Apple CarPlay, only Apple Maps will be seen on that screen. If you're running Android Auto, then you can only see Google Maps on that screen. Otherwise, you can run it on the central touchscreen infotainment system itself.
I remember you being annoyed by that, because we were running Google Maps on your iPhone and we needed to take a right. You indicated, and blind spot monitor.
Yeah, exactly. So this is some point of feedback that we had given earlier on. Essentially, when you use the 360-degree camera's blind view monitoring function, when you use the indicator, the display takes up the entirety of the touchscreen's field. And because that happens, and you know how many of our turns, especially in small towns, are narrow lanes, one of 72 trillion lanes that you are supposed to turn into. And that just makes you wonder, should I be indicating or will I get lost? That sort of comes into play. I do hope that this can either be altered on the touchscreen itself or be brought in a different way onto the digital instrument cluster.
So that's the entirety of the features list that's going on. And I think that's the perfect segue into the way the car drives.
Yep.
Yeah. So, like I said at the start of the video, 120 horsepower, 190 Nm sounds very exciting, especially when it's coupled with a car that is this sized. Now, there is something called power to weight ratio, of course, and if you want the numbers, it's around 220 kilograms heavier in case of the standard version and around 270 kilograms heavier in case of the long range version compared to similarly spec'd ICE or petrol powered Punch EV.
Correct.
0 to 100 on the LR is 9.5 seconds. Top speed is rated at 140 kilometers per hour, and it just does it every single time.
Yep. The core idea though that you need to understand is that this has been designed in mind for first-time electric car buyers. That they're not, yes, it would be nice to give you excitement and the kind of acceleration that you will get with the Punch EV, it will not be possible with any petrol car that's in the same segment.
Correct.
For getting that kind of acceleration, that kind of ease when it comes to overtakes, especially at highway speeds. But over here, they've not gone for outright excitement because yes, you do have Eco City and Sport modes, but even if you do engage Sport mode, there's none of the throw you back into the seat action that in fact you do get in your long-term Tata Tiago EV. Even if it's brief for that 10 to 20 kph sprint. Usability wise, yes, but it's not giving you the stereotypical terms that we had used at first when we started experiencing.
Torque is available at 0 RPM.
Yes, all the cliches over there. So yeah, it is experientially not that much of a leap up from a petrol car in terms of grappling with it or getting familiar with it easily. So even if you're a first-time EV buyer, this kind of performance, irrespective of the drive mode, is going to seem very familiar to you.
Yeah, to put it very simply, this is simply an automatic car that happens to run on electricity. That is the easiest way I can describe it. And even if you're an absolute noob at driving, you're going to be very comfortable getting used to this car. And this car in particular, because of the driving position and the compact dimensions too, it's just really easy to get used to. And because I've been driving the Tiago EV for a better part of 3 months now, I get to give you reference as to how this behaves compared to that. Honestly, it doesn't feel entirely different, right? And this has been a pain point for me, I think, with respect to electric vehicles in general. How do you differentiate one from the other? In case of petrol, diesel cars, you know, each engine has a little bit of character. It has, you know, has little points where they make power, don't make power, right? With this, you hit the throttle, it just does its thing, right? Getting used to an electric vehicle is very easy. And this, I think, like I said, with the driving position, just supremely easy to drive around. And it is quick, it is deceptively quick, but it's not surprising that it is.
Yeah, it's not going to give you any kind of shock value in that sense. And similarly, you'll also see a great edge of familiarity when it comes to the ride comfort, because we have been putting it through largely great roads in and around Bangalore. But those few rough patches that we hit, this has ensured, and this is, I think, maybe another one of those Gen 2 EV platform benefits, that it feels as comfortable, as pliant, as mature as the Punch itself does over bad roads. So that is something they've maintained consistently. And you also have got the same region adjustment paddle shifters over here. So 0, 1, 2, 3 levels. Level 3 is something I would honestly use in the most crawl traffic conditions, because otherwise it can get a little bit jarring to use. But otherwise you're fine in level 1 or 2. And that is the summation of the drive experience overall with the Tata Punch EV, that irrespective of what petrol or diesel car that you might be coming from, or no car ever that you're coming from, getting to grips with its drive experience, getting comfortable with it, getting familiar with it, will not feel daunting at any point. Now the big question obviously does come in that, you know, it is still, in this top spec at least, 15 lakh rupees for a Tata Punch, for a micro SUV in that segment. Yes, that is a lot of money, and I'd split that premium into two halves. The first half is but obvious when you switch to electric. There is a price premium that just comes with that. You've seen that already with the Nexon itself, that the Nexon EV is sitting in the same price space as the petrol or diesel version, as a Seltos, as a Grand Vitara, basically sub 4 sitting in the same territory as a 4.3 meter SUV. And similarly, this is getting into the territory that you'd see the Nexon in, where subcompact SUVs are. So yes, there is that price premium with electric. There will be a certain operational rationale that you'll have to run to make that cost make sense. The other half of it is that you're paying a price premium, yes, but then look at how many features you're getting here. Compare this to a 22, 23 lakh rupee compact SUV, with the exception of ADAS.
It's got everything. It's got everything. So In terms of design, it's delivering. It's got the sense of occasion. In terms of interior fit finish quality, again, it's delivering. It's got everything. In terms of features, it's not leaving you wanting for anything. Where it is actually leaving me wanting a little is in terms of rear seat space. If that isn't a consideration list, you know, if that isn't a consideration factor rather, if I'd be driving this car solo, maximum I'd have, you know, a partner or a kid in the rear. This car simply works, and then you get to reap the benefits of a silent drive, a very low cost of running. And the Punch EV, I think, to sum it up in just a couple of words, it just works.
Exactly. So that was the long and even longer about the Tata Punch EV. And yes, this is something that we had said at the first drive reviews of the new Harrier and Safari as well.
Yeah.
The one thing that they have to ensure that they're getting right is the long-term reliability.
Yeah.
The, you know, niggle-free experience that they can deliver.
Quality control.
Because we are seeing enough inputs coming up online where people are having issues, not just with the electrics from Tata vehicles. We've seen it with the petrols as well, with the diesels as well. Random complaints. Yes, the discussions are anecdotal,
correct,
but it's not going to paint a positive image, and we are still not in the position where we can outright recommend this car blindly, purely because we're at the back of our own head. We're like, okay, is something going to go wrong in the initial lot? So that is something that Tata has to ensure, and we hope that they do ensure, especially because now we're talking about their pure EV platform.
Correct. Yeah. So as long as Tata has the QC and the after sales in order, this is a product that we would be willing to stick our neck out for.
Exactly.
What do you think of the Punch EV? Let us know in the comments. If you like this format, please let us know. If you don't like what we talk about, please argue with us in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram. We'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.